Calling and buloluku with whatever we do. Jioni safu nola with whatever we do. Haleyi demunyu skula nyepamne ne kudlukula nyepangi ragala gena nyepamne ne kudlukula buloke nongoto ni beti sola ibuloke dato ni betoto
Mingi Congo na
Lami te jibe norin te nyame lamin
kabana wulo kono
nyinta mo lamin
pabilenki
muna ngata afongole
haina
ngata ngoto le fabrama
mingi baba nyola
ngoto le fabrama
namu jumala kan kuma diten
fabrama
jumala mu
ndele bare muso
lunda mana
mo kata
jamani bere
alindo ko
jamani
bari ngoto man kontande
bari jamani fana na mudu ma kontan
ngoto minaka ngala min de fon filitala lamin jibe nori nyaala
lamin ila siran sama ne benki yala so tol sayni no ko mo lakko momo
ngoto
nam
ite lamin hakilo diata bake karambu ngoto anu santeng ministry ko di ngole si suko na amake ko do holi de
si biton
bagona de
ala ni ko kede namo balo
ala ni na ko na karta bulo be damala ni je
ngoto
nam
ngoto mon kontan fere
jamani mu ne keda
ite ke lamin ki wulo ko no nyintay mon ko do fete malo lamin nyanta sila la be la moy kala karango
jamani karamol be soron ne ko fasita wulo ko nako
karamol ma soron ni ko karamol soron da amake ko holi de lem ngoto dini ngo nyanta sila la ala karango la moy yamen kamen fue man kontan anda mande
alla nyin kombo courant adanda la kombo len do la jan karamol soron do kamen courant ma rado la kombo e don do fana na karamol soron je karamol soron lamin ada lo nyino la man tara fe na sokon ala mu nekela
am lamin ite fo de malon ko lesinol be ke kar radio to
nga fine
e ko nyani mo lamin ya mu na fonye
bir kabin mina kan tambita nteri maning Fatu tambide la sugal ala dinngol bebe siri be la moy ka
faru danso am fana tambida jele ni subala la ngaje dinngol be jet talanta nen kili warol e be seri jelet
sa lamin fanante ku kili wo ke no la ba bad lamin bi taka wulo ko no nyin taymo alami
amandara fenela
ite dine ko ni man si yakari la suno la moy radio to balon na
muneka ke afonde ba nyara ni alon
telentel jikot
afonde ba munebe ke
ite balon tel be jikritel ni man karambe ku ke yaaje nata karana mbasa mala ya tarije
par ñarande kombo courant ho findira kombo ide na raje den sonka bay ko lamin manya tala wulo ko karam mo be so afa nyambe
ko to wole nati bawo ngalle ni lamin kuntala kombo courant o ka fa me kombo courant asototal wala kinay ko e sisu ko no bari ni ko e sisu ko no be karangol di ke la radio lin telel to hani tele masoto to nyaay man tele soto la bongo bar radio be bulen ko to batiri sanga ay si ay alamo
sa do kala nyaadi
ko ta o bulaji
ado kala nyaadi
kamun ke nyaadi
radio abe wala mo la be mona falaje
ibe la karandirol kala jele ila subjector baby jele baby jele
wala nanga chocho moy fa dan so wala ngombe tambi kana ngadi ningol de be ikadum bungo de ko kana marmo
ma asototal de
la min mala be kara wala de
bari laftal ideal on ko inde every year second wala fourth
mona ni ko di ha ko de ko folle sinila ba ndele sinilo ne ba
mba say mba foke en koto wole fango yen wulindi yalo famo keta bat yin fana bulata ko ko de meyen nati jambi lamin nyanta karana ndel beji ko be nyineka ya bulay kara wulo kono ta kilar ya bambalo yo be bulaje koto dinni ngoy si ayala le sino la moy radio
wada ka munda kara mo man soro lamin nyanta kara si so na radio
la sila le ayala le sino
dal ko korno ko smalo
kilar ya
mo be ngala ko momo say mi do ni kono kera
mengi bruzo
ndelo ko la da ba rosa no radio ba no bari woro radio ni abe jele ba ngamra do man dembe guljan dala nyara nyara woro ko fendi mo la lamin tayra ba rosa
bara te ku folo ajibe nori nya labi tamete
teku
bari ko do famo ke
image nani nyambol si zol le keje kisigi man si zol no le kafun ka nyoma bari nyambu kino ni manya na kafinde ni nambe ko zol la ga
ngalle limbeta de be nyambo do dilanna
nyara ni ko ridin fenlat nyara nata
bari famo ke da
ngata bun kono tabi bun kono nyara ngando ko fele ko ke baru nganda ni pelo la ndija
iyo tar la
bun kono bismillah bismillah
pendulala yefungo tanka sina dolu tanka koro korota koro korota
My name is Bubaba. We have, in our previous lessons, we are discussing on elements of accounting, that is basic elements of accounting, and then I have gave you an assignment on the previous topic, on the previous lesson. Now the question number 1, dash is an advantage that a business has over their competitors due to good reputation, good strategic location, good management system, quality products, and connectivity. The answer there is goodwill. The answer for number 1 is goodwill. Now number 2, an expenses incurred in the formation of a business or company and does not have any realizable value is called, number 2, the answer is preliminary expenses. Number 2, the answer is preliminary expenses. And number 3, dash is a right given to a business to use someone product or trademark in returns for payment. Number 3, the answer is royalties. Number 3, the answer is royalties. Then number 4, the legal right or authority given by the government to a business to invent something new is, number 4, the answer is patent right. Number 4, the answer is patent right. And number 5, that is the last one, dash a right given to a business to copy someone's work exactly as it is done by the owner. Number 5, the answer is copyright. Number 5, the answer is copyright. Now, our new lesson today is going to be, that's the second lesson, that is errors and suspense accounts. Now, the learning objective, you have meaning of errors, types of errors, meaning of suspense accounts, how to correct errors using the journal, that is the general journal, or we call it the journal, or the journal proper. Now, the fifth one, how to prepare a suspense account. The fifth one is how to prepare a suspense account. Now, let's look at the meaning of errors in accounting. Basically, when we said errors in accounting, we said these are mistakes made during the process of recording financial transactions when an accountant deviates from the principle of double entry. Now, basically, when we said errors, we said these are mistakes made during the process of recording financial transactions. When an accountant deviates from the principle of double entry, automatically errors are made. Automatically errors are made. When I say double entry, remember, double entry is the act of debiting and crediting two separate accounts at the same time with the same value or amount. I will repeat again. When we said double entry, we said is the act of debiting and crediting two separate accounts at the same time with the same value or amount. So if an accountant is preparing the books of accounts and he did not follow the principle of double entry, therefore errors will be made. This is what we call errors. There are mistakes that are made during the preparations of the books of account or during the recording of the financial transactions of what a business. That is the meaning. Now we move to types of errors. Now in accounting, basically we have two types of errors. Now let's look at the diagram illustrated here. We have types of errors. We have two types. Now the first one, on the left side, we have errors that are not detected by the trial balance. On the right side, that is errors that are detected by the trial balance, or errors that does not affect the total agreement of the trial balance, or errors that affect the total agreement of the trial balance. There are two types of errors. Errors that affect the total agreement of the trial balance and errors that do not affect the total agreement of the trial balance. Now let's look at the first error. We said errors that are not detected by the trial balance. The first one, we said these types of errors are divided into 7 main categories and do not donate any suspense account whenever they exist in a given question. Now, that is talking about the errors that do not affect the total agreement of the trial balance. Remember, a trial balance can still balance whilst there is still an error in the trial balance. Those are the errors that do not affect the total agreement of the trial balance, and they are divided into 7. Now, preparing a suspense account, any error that do not affect the total agreement of the trial balance must not pass through the suspense account. Must not pass through the suspense account. That is, errors that are not detected should not be recorded in preparing a suspense account. Now, let's move to the second type of error. That is, errors that are detected by the trial balance. Remember, in a trial balance, when we say trial balance, basically we said it's a list of debits and credit balance extracted from the ledger accounts at a particular point in time. Now, if a trial balance did not balance, remember, it means there are errors that are detected by the trial balance. Therefore, you have to raise what we call suspense accounts. As an accountant, if you are preparing the books of accounts and then your trial balance did not balance, you have to raise what we call suspense accounts. So we said, let's look at these errors. We said errors that exist under this section must have suspense account, meaning any error that affects the total agreement of the trial balance must pass through the suspense account. If you are preparing the suspense accounts, it must pass through the suspense account. But errors that do not affect the total agreement of the trial balance, it meaning the trial balance will still balance, it will not affect the trial balance, must not be recorded or must not pass through the suspense account. That is basically, those are the two types, errors that are detected or errors that are not detected. So we move to the next one, errors that are detected by trial balance. Now, as I told you, we say trial balance is a list of debits and credit balance extracted from the ledger accounts at a particular point in time. A trial balance is a list of debits and credit balance extracted from the ledger accounts at a particular point in time. Now, if a trial balance errors are still exist. Trial balance can still balance, but errors still exist. Those are the errors that are not affecting the trial balance. But here, we are talking about errors that affect the total agreement of the trial balance. So therefore, we will raise what we call suspense account. What we call suspense account. But here, we are talking about errors that are detected by the trial balance. So here, these are the errors that are detected by the trial balance. Now, these are not the errors that affect the total agreement of the trial balance. It's errors that do not affect the total agreement of the trial balance. Here, we have to make that correction. Now, errors that do not affect the total agreement of the trial balance. One, we have error of omission, error of original entry, error of principal, error of commission. When we said error of omission, we said this error occurs when the transactions is completely omitted from both the debit side and the credit side of the books of the accounts. When the debit side and the credit side has been totally omitted from the books of accounts. So that is one error that do not affect the total agreement of the trial balance. The trial balance will still balance, but still there is an error. Now, the second error that do not affect the total agreement of the trial balance is error of original entry. Now, let's look at error of original entry. We say this is where a wrong amount is entered on the debit side and credit side of the account. Now, when we said error of original entry, we said this is when a wrong amount is entered on both the debit side and the credit side of the account. Example, purchase of goods $301 from our entered in the books as 103, meaning purchase has been undercast. Purchase has been undercast. So that is an error, meaning you have to subtract, and if you find it different, then the difference, that's what you record under the journal. You debit purchase accounts and you credit the creditor's account, which is our. Now the third error is error of principle. This occurs where a transaction is entered in a wrong classes of account. When we said error of principle, this is when a wrong classes of accounts is entered in another account, meaning real account is entered in a nominal account. Real account is entered in a nominal account. Example, motor vehicle was entered in motor expenses account. Then 4, we have error of commission. This is when a transaction is entered in a wrong person's account. Remember, we have different similar names. We are continuing on the lesson, that is compensating errors. These errors cancel out each other. These errors cancel out each other, meaning if you record an amount 600 on the debit side, the same amount should reflect on the credit side. Now 7, duplication, errors duplication. This is a situation where in the business transaction is recorded twice, meaning the transaction is recorded twice. You either you debit a transaction twice or you credit a transaction twice. So basically, these are the errors that do not affect the total agreement of the trial balance. Now let's move to the next one, that is suspend accounts. Now remember, the errors that affect the total agreement of the trial balance, that is one, we have what? Single entry. We have single entry. And the second one, we have overcasting error. And the third one, we have undercasting. Now, when we said single entry, we said it's a system of bookkeeping that does not conform the principle of double entry. And overcasting, meaning recording of an amount above the nominal value. But undercasting, recording of an amount below the nominal amount or values. Now let's look at suspend accounts. The definition of suspend accounts said suspend account can be defined as a temporal account used to record any difference in the trial balance until the errors are detected, discovered, or detected and corrected. Now when we say suspend account, we said it's an account that used to record temporal difference on a trial balance until errors are detected and corrected. So if a trial balance did not balance, therefore you have to raise what we call suspend account. The difference, you write suspend, and then you write the amount on that side, meaning there are errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. Now the next one, that is the rules in correcting errors. Now the first rule, identification of the type of error. Now remember, when you are preparing a suspend account, the first thing you have to identify the error. You have to identify the error, whether it's an error that affects the total agreement of the trial balance or errors that do not affect the total agreement of the trial balance. That is false. That is the first one. You identify the type of error. Now the second rule, if it is an error that cannot affect the trial balance, it must not pass through the suspend account. Now what they are saying here, the second rule says that any error that do not affect the total agreement of the trial balance must not pass through the suspend account. So in preparing a trial balance can still balance, yet still there is an error. There is an error. So if that happens, therefore those errors should not pass through the suspend accounts. Now the third one, if it is an error that can affect the trial balance agreement, it must pass through the suspend account. That is errors that are detected by the trial balance. So they are saying here, if errors that affect the total agreement of the trial balance must pass through the suspend account, like single entry, overcasting, undercasting. Now, the fourth one, we journalize the correction and post it to the ledger. We journalize the correction, you identify the errors, and then you enter it in the ledger accounts. The fifth one, show the error in the ledger accounts and make necessary correction. Meaning, after knowing all the errors, you have to prepare the journal in order for you to make necessary corrections. Now, we have illustration 1. So let's answer this illustration 1 together. Now, the first illustration, we said the trial balance of Binta failed to agree. The difference was placed in a suspense account. The following errors were discovered. Now, the first one, we said what sales daybook was under cash, 5,000. Number 2, purchase daybook was over cash, 7,500. Number 3, discount allow was under cash, 2,500. And number 4, sales daybook was over cash, 1,500. And number 5, insurance was under cash, 450. You are required to prepare the journal entries, no narration. And number 2, you show the suspense account. Now here, we are going to prepare the journal entries in order to correct the necessary errors. Now let's look at illustration 1. We said the trial balance of Binta failed to agree. The difference was placed in a suspense account. The following errors were discovered. Meaning here, the trial balance of Binta failed to agree. So the difference was placed in a suspense account. The following errors were discovered. Now number 1, sales daybook was under cash, 5,000. Now the rule said when you are preparing a journal entries, you always start with the debit entries. That is the suspense. You start with suspense. Now let's look at the 2 accounts here, because this one has affected the trial balance. Sales daybook was under cash. Now remember, sales is a gain. Sales always have what? A credit balance. So when it is under cash, you maintain the credit balance and you debit what? Suspense account. So here we are going to debit what? The rule says that you start with the debit balance, that is suspense. We said suspense. That is suspense account, and we have what? Sales account. Now here we are going to debit suspense account and we credit what? Sales account, because we are going to maintain the credit balance for sale. So that's going to be 5,000. We debit suspense 5,000 and we credit what? Sales. Sales. That is the first one. We debit suspense and we credit what? Sales. So that is 1. 2. Purchase daybook was over cash, 7,500. Now here, purchase always have what? A debit balance. So now when the amount is overstated, you cannot maintain the debit balance. You have to transfer it to the credit side and debit suspense. So here we are going to debit suspense and we credit what? Purchase account. So that is suspense account. And then we have what? Purchases account. Now here we are going to debit what? Suspense. The amount is 7,500. 7,500. And we credit what? Purchase account, because it is overstated. That is 7,500. So the next one, that is question number 3. Now number 3, that is discount allow was under cash, 2,500. We said discount allow is an expenses, and all expenses should have what? A debit balance. So this transaction has affected the trial balance. So it must pass through what? The suspense account. So here, the 2 accounts here is discount allow and suspense accounts. So we have what? Discount allow. discount allow account, and then we have what? Suspend account. So when discount allow is on the cash, so you maintain the debit balance. Are you with me? So you credit what? Suspend account. So we are going to debit what? Discount allow, and we credit suspend. That is 2,500. 2,500. And we credit what? Suspend account, the same amount, 2,500. Now we move to number 4, that is transaction 4. Sales day book was over cash, 1,500. Meaning sales has been over cash. So sales is a gain. Sales always have what? A credit balance. But if it is over cash, you cannot maintain the credit balance. You have to transfer it to the debit side and credit what? Suspend account. So that's going to be, that's going to be sales account and suspend. Suspend account. So we debit sales and we credit what? Suspend. So the amount there is 1,500. And we credit the same amount, that is suspend account, that is 1,500. Now we move to the last transaction, which is insurance was on the cash, 450. And insurance is an expenses. We said all expenses should have what? A debit balance. Now here, when expenses are on the cash, you maintain the debit balance. We maintain the debit balance, but when it is over cash, you cannot maintain the debit balance. You have to transfer it to the credit side and suspend. So here we have what? Insurance and suspend account. We have insurance and suspend account. Now here, we are going to debit insurance, that is 450, because it is on the cash, and we credit what? Suspend account with the same amount, 450. So basically, that is how you prepare the journal entries. Now let's move on. This is letter A, that is the journal entries, and letter B is suspend account. We have to show out the suspend account. So that is letter B. We have what? Suspend accounts. We have the credit side and we have the debit side. Remember, Binta's trial balance failed to agree. So this is why we are raising a suspend account in order to correct the errors. So now let's look at here the journal. We have what? Number 1, this transaction has affected the trial balance. So therefore, here we credit sales, and then we are going to transfer it to the debit side in order to observe the double entry rules. That is sales. Sales is 5,000. So on the credit side in the journal is 5,000. So we transfer it to the debit side in the suspend account for you to observe the double entry rules. Now let's move to number 2. Here, this transaction also affected the trial balance. So we must record it in the suspend account. So we have purchase is credited. So therefore, we have to transfer it to the debit side. The reason why we are transferring to the debit side because it is over cash in the general journal. So we debit it in the suspend account. That is 7,500. Now number 3, this transaction also affected the suspend account. So the trial balance. It affected the trial balance. So therefore, it must pass through the suspend account. So we debit discount allow. We are going to credit it in the suspend account. Discount allow. Discount allow is 2,500. 2,500. And we also have number 4, that's sales. This transaction also affected the trial balance. So we have sales is debited here, because it is overcast. So here we are going to transfer it to the credit side. That is sales. The sales amount here is 1,500. And number 5, insurance is under cash. So here we are going to transfer it to the credit side to complete the double entry rules. Insurance. Insurance is for 50. So now we have the suspense account. We are going to add the debit side and the credit side. We compare which side is greater. 5,000 on the debit side plus 7,500. We have 12,500 on the debit side. That is 12,000. Debit side, 12,500. And now credit side. Let's look at the credit side. The credit side is 2,500 plus 1,500 plus 450. So the credit side is 4,450. 450. Meaning the debit side of the suspense account is more than the credit side. So you subtract, the difference will be what? That is the difference in the trial balance. So the total here on the debit side is going to be 12,500. And the difference you write what? Trial balance different. Trial balance. Difference. Minus, meaning the total debit side subtracted from the total you have on the credit side. 12,500. That is 8,050. So if you add this, will give you 12,500. So illustration 2, you can make that one as an assignment. When we come back to our next lesson, we solve it together. I thank you all.